Okay, so live stream starting. So this is episode 1 of a series I'm going to be making. Just some atomic chess lessons and atomic chess concepts. So in the first one, we're going to go over the basic rules and some basic ideas that you see a lot, and potentially a little bit of opening theory. And I'll go over 2 games or 1 game that I played. So first of all, just the basic rules. So atomic chess, when you make a capture, the pieces in a 1 by 1 radius around it will explode. So just to give you an example, let's say here. So now if I'm white and I take this pawn, the capturing piece, the captured piece, and everything in a 1 by 1 radius, so in these squares, will leave the board. So if I take here, the knight goes, my knight goes, and this pawn goes. Now, one important thing to notice about what this might mean is that if let's say I see this, right? If the queen comes out like this, you can block with a pawn. Doesn't matter if it's defended, because every piece is sort of inherently defended. If I want to take, then you would lose the queen. But another exception to this rule is that pawns are not exploded. So pawns that are adjacent are not exploded. So let's say here, if I take this pawn, the pieces nearby will explode. This pawn will explode because it's the captured piece, and the capturing piece will also explode, but the pawn in a 1 by 1 radius will not explode. So pawns can survive if they are around the capture, but if they are captured, they don't survive. So if I take here, this pawn stays on the board, and for example, if I take here, these pawns both stay on the board even though they're in the 1 by 1 radius. Okay. So yeah, every piece is defended because of that. And another thing this means is that kings can never capture anything. So let's say I start with e3, e6. This, for example, this is checkmate because if you're next to the king, any capture here would blow up the king. So black has nothing to do, and this is just checkmate. And if he ever tries to capture this king at any position, he will lose his own king. And what this means is that kings can actually be next to each other. So I'll show you this. This is like an actual endgame. For example, in Atomic, the kings can go next to each other, and you can't take the other one because you would blow up your own king. So they can kind of just go together, and it gives confusing endgames. So I'll go over how to win those in just a second. So yeah. So also, if you want to learn some openings, they have knight h3, knight f3, which are really common openings because knights are very strong in Atomic because they can jump over pieces, so it's hard to block them. So knight f3 is a very common, it's probably the best first move in Atomic. Another good move is e3 to bring out the queen and the bishop. It's also good. So yeah, okay, another concept to know is pawns equal pieces, basically, in terms of material. So you'll see in a lot of Atomic games, because pawns are hard to capture, it's hard to block pawns from promoting. It takes a piece to sort of go in front of them. And you can't, like in regular chess, you could just use a queen to pick up free pawns, but in Atomic, if you try to take a free pawn like this, you just lose the piece. So in the end, pawns are typically considered equal to pieces, so the material system is a little bit different. Okay, and then another concept that I want to show is when you have the open rook file. So I'll just play some opening moves. So here in this position, when you have opposing rooks like this, it might seem like the best thing is to take this rook, and in this case, it's now black's turn, and both rooks are gone. But there's actually another concept in Atomic where the best thing to do is actually move 1 square before the other piece. And what this does is it threatens checkmate, threatens taking here, and if he tries to escape, it's still checkmate, because he cannot take with the king. So the idea behind this 1 square before move is that it's now black's turn, he has to take your rook. And so now the trade happened, there's no difference in position, but it's white's turn. So white can checkmate, actually. This will lead to checkmate, doing this. So in the other situation, if you actually just took his rook, then it would be black's turn. So it's important to, if you ever have rooks on open file or queens or something, you often move 1 square before. So another example of this would be, let's say I don't take, he goes here. Instead of taking, I could just do one square in front of the piece, and now this threatens checkmate, so he has to take, and then do the same thing, and now it's my turn, so I can checkmate. So yeah, and then, okay, now we'll go into endgames. So it might seem like because the kings can be next to each other, you can never really end the game. So let me give an example of an endgame. I'll just do some random moves so I can get to one. Here we go. So let's say here, white is up a pawn, right? So white will build a promote. White will build a promote, and there's nothing black can do about it, right? So, oh, this is a bad example. Let's say he doesn't take. Okay, here. So in this position, it looks like in regular chess you could touch kings. You cannot touch kings. So in Atomic though, if you try to checkmate like this, he just touches kings. And now if you ever try to run away, he'll always just stay next to your king. Always like this. So this starts to seem like a problem because you can never really escape the other king. And as long as his king is here, you can't take it. So he can just do whatever he wants and you can't capture it no matter what. So there are a few tricks to win, and there's situations you need. So one thing is you either need one remaining pawn on the side that is losing, and what your goal is to get your queen to capture this pawn in a way that will blow up the king but not your own king. And the other way to win is if you have two queens, then you can hide your king in the corner and prevent him from touching. So this is a good example here where you go put your king in the corner, and then you get your queens in this position. This is the key position right here. So in this position, it's now black's turn, and black has to move his king away. This is the only legal move to move his king away. And then you can move a queen to g2, and there's no way for him to get next to your king anymore. So you basically form this little barricade in the corner, and his king has to leave, and then after checking a few more moves, it's just checkmate. So the important thing to remember is to be careful to not stalemate. It's very easy in these kind of positions to, if your queen is here, for example, and you play queen g2, this is actually stalemate, because there's no legal move for black right now. Any move would blow up his king, but his king is technically safe where it is, so it's not checkmate. The important thing here would be to play queen 1 square, now king here, and then get this position, where the queens are next to each other and the kings are like this. And now it's forced for this king to move away, and then you block his king from touching your king. Okay, and this one's indirectly blowing up the king. So in this position, you want to get your queen to a place where it's attacking this pawn, and then the next thing you do is you move your pieces so that you can you can take this pawn and blow up the other king. So in this case, you play king f6, and his king has to follow. If he tries to move away, then you just have easy checkmate, and there's nothing you can do about that. So he has to always stay touching your king. But if he tries to stay touching with your king in this situation, he's now put himself in a position where you can take this pawn. And when you take this pawn, you blow up his king, but you keep your king safe. So it's sort of hard to, it takes practice to learn the patterns, but it's important that you get, you have to make sure your queen is on any square where you can attack this pawn. So it could be good. You could also do, for example, you could also do this, and then bring your king through here. And you generally bring your king like this through a diagonal, with the queen and pawn touching. So here, king here, and then takes. Okay, and then last thing I'll go over is one Atomic game that I played against Hero of Ages in 0+1. So it's a quick time control. It's not super accurate, but it was still a pretty good game. So he played knight h3. That was his first move. And just to give some opening introduction first, when you see knight h3, you can't play like regular chess. You play maybe e5, e4 is what you might see in regular chess, but in Atomic, if you play something like e5, then he can already play knight g5, and if I take, I would lose my queen, so I don't want to do that. And he's actually threatening checkmate. He's threatening to take here and blow up my king, so I would have to move the pawn away. And now this knight is already a very strong knight, and he would play something like h4 to prevent my queen from coming in, but very soon you would see that this is pretty bad for me, because this knight is very strong. So typically, if you see, like, for example, knight f3, the only move, there's two moves to survive. It's f6 or e5. In e5, you want to get this position, And in f6, the idea is to block his knight from coming in. Because if you try to play a normal move like, I don't know, knight c6, oh no, let's do, I don't know, anything passive like a6, he's actually threatening knight e5, and this is already checkmate because he's double attacking these two squares. Even if you try moving the d-pawn, then he has knight e5 attacking f7, and if you try to move it away, then knight d7. And again, touching your king, you can't take it. It won't let me. And then the king can't really escape. You're threatening to take this bishop and blow up the king. And the bishop can't move, and if the king moves here, still checkmate. So it's unstoppable checkmate. So you have to be very, very careful as black early on. In this opening, he's starting to go to g5, so I just play h6 and block that. So d4, e6 is always a good move to activate your pieces, like this. Okay, knight c3 is a good move too, because that's a strong knight. So you want to play c6. Generally, you play c6 to counter this knight, and f6 to counter the f3 knight. Okay, and then b5 is also a common move to just block pieces from coming in. And b5 is a very common defense move because a lot of times b5 is a good square for white to move his knight and win material. But by putting a pawn there, he can never really move a piece without losing it. So if he wants to move a piece here, he would lose the piece immediately. Okay. So another thing you'll notice here is I haven't developed any of my pieces, which is typically fine in Atomic because I'm sort of developing anyways by moving my pawns. I'm making like a wall because pawns are much stronger in Atomic than regular chess. They can sort of form a wall, and it's hard to break through because anytime he takes one of them, he would blow up his own piece. So yeah, what I'm trying to do is space out my pawns so that it makes it hard for him to invade with his pieces. So he tries to come in with the knight, so I just get rid of it, open my H file. Okay, and then b4 here, he can't take because that would blow up his knight and he would lose material. So he plays knight b5, and here's again it's important to remember that pawns are equal to pieces, so knight b5 actually isn't a blunder, it's completely fine, and this capture is basically a trade. Yep. And then he plays c4. I don't think this is actually that good of a move because it makes it easier for me to open up things. So here I played bishop a6, and my idea is to take here and then open up this bishop because, as you'll see in a lot of these kind of positions, if he plays something passive and then lets my bishop come in, this bishop is a very strong threat because it's next to his king, so he can't take it, and it can be very annoying to this bishop here. I can move it around. Like I can go here and he wouldn't be able to take because he would lose his queen. So in general in Atomic, if a rook or a queen gets near the king, it's basically checkmate every single time. So that's the idea with bishop a6. And you'll notice that this is move 13, and that's my first piece move. But again, because I got this good pawn structure, my pieces are sort of, like, pawns can be considered pieces, I guess. So I was already developed to enough of an extent that it's fine that it was only move 13 where I played my first piece move, bishop a6. So he plays bishop f1, and now, if I trade, his idea is to not take, but one square before, and it's check, so then I would have to take, and now it's his turn. And he got rid of this annoying bishop. So I decided not to take. I played queen c7 instead. Now with the idea of taking and then getting my queen in to c2 or taking or something like that. So he plays queen c2, and now he wants to counter my queen from entering. So I played b3, just push his queen away. And now I take. And then again here he demonstrates the same idea where you want to move your piece one square before and plays bishop b5 check. He wants to trade bishops, but if he were to take instead, then I would be able to bring my queen in. And here I'm threatening checkmate in many ways. He can't even castle out of it because I would take here and blow up his king. So it's hard for him to stop these checkmates. So he has to take my queen, but then he loses his bishop. So it's important that he played one square before, this key idea, so that when I take, it's now his turn. And he can castle first and before I come in. But even so, in this situation, it's actually still winning for me. So I played bishop b4. Probably not the best move. It's just to get a trade, but it was probably better to just move my queen in immediately. But I played bishop b4. He played a takes, which again is a trade because pawns are equal to pieces. And then I played queen c2. Now here, my threat is to take here and blow up his king, and also win material. So if he tries to escape with his king, I still win the rook. So he's got to be very, very careful. When your queen comes in, this is very, very risky. So he plays bishop d2, and that's to block my queen from attacking. but I still have this nice move, queen e4, to pressure the diagonal. So now I'm threatening queen g2 checkmate, and queen h1 checkmate. And so if he tries to block next to his king, then I can always just take and blow up the king. So he has to block more than one square away from the king. So all of these squares cannot be used to block, nor can he move his king there. So he has to play queen f3. It's the only move that survives, because if I take this queen, it doesn't blow up his king. But here I have another nice move to continue the attack, which is queen e2. And now queen e2, what it does is it threatens a bunch of checkmates. It also threatens to take this rook, which would blow up the king. So now he can't block because my queen is getting too close. If he tries to block like this, I can just take. So he has to just get rid of my queen. But now I've won a lot of material. I've cleared all these pieces. So that's the idea. A lot of times you'll see if the queen can invade like this, it's already really risky. So here he has to take and then lose all this material. So I played knight c6, just develop. And he still has some hope because pawns are strong. He's got this nice pass pawn here. So I played a3, and now I'm actually threatening to take here and blow up his rook. So he moves his rook away. And now I'm trying to promote, so that's a strong threat. Oops. Okay, so here he plays a nice move, d takes c6, and now his rook is very strong. His rook is threatening to come to d8, and this is actually checkmate. I'll go over in that future video. It's a little more advanced, where he's threatening rook here. If I play something passive like knight h6, he can. This will lead to checkmate because the rook is very strong, and I'll go over this exact mate pattern later. Where you'll see the rook pinning to a pawn, and the adjacent squares are the only places the king can go, so wherever he goes he gets blown up. So here it's actually kind of hard for me to, there's only 2 legal moves that defend, because this rook is very strong, and the idea is to promote and then pin the rook to the king. So now he can't, it's not legal for him to move the rook here because my queen attacks the king. So he moved his king away, and now he's trying to attack like this. I just take his rook, and now I'm just up a lot of material, and there's nothing you can do, so you resign in this position. So yeah, at this point, there's no real hope. I'll just trade off some of the last pawns. I can even sacrifice my rook for it. And then what I'll probably do is lock his king in the corner. But I mean, this is a little more advanced. You lock his king in the corner, and then get rid of one of the pawns, like this. And then here, now he's got to go back and forth between these 2 squares, like this, and you can just promote, because this rook, he can never take the rook no matter what. King can never take any piece, and this is just checkmate. So yeah, he was right to resign there pretty much. But yeah, okay, the most important ideas to sort of take away from this, I guess, just learn the basic rules of Atomic. And then I put these 5 main things to know, which is that pawns are equal to piece in terms of material. The king can never capture anything, and the kings can be next to each other in endgames. So that's this thing. These are the 2 ways to win in the endgames when the king are next to each other. So you'll see both of these patterns a lot in endgames, so it's good to learn them if you want to get better at Atomic. And then we got the one move before idea, which you saw with bishop b5, 1 square before. Here, where he played bishop b5 check. So he's checking me, and he's threatening to activate his bishop. So I take back, and then he makes it his turn. Instead of, if he took here, it would be my turn. Okay, and then every piece is defended. Technically, actually, every piece is stronger than being defended, because in regular chess, if I were to take, he would have to recapture. But in Atomic, if I take, he doesn't even have to recapture. I just automatically lose my queen. So that's what makes pawns so powerful too, is because they can't just be taken a lot in Atomic. But in regular chess, you can, like for example, queen is very good against pawns. It'll just take them all effortlessly. But in Atomic, a queen will never take a pawn, or you would lose the queen. So it has to be a good exchange. It's hard to get pawns. And then also pawns are immune to the 1-by-1 rule. So if I take here, for example, if this were a piece, then it would blow up. But because it's a pawn, it doesn't blow up. It stays there. So, let me give an example. If he moves a piece next to it, and then I take here, the piece will go away, but the pawn stays. So those are a few reasons why pawns are as strong as they are. Okay, so I think that's a good introduction to Atomic. if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. And yeah, there's definitely some more good resources here too. They got queen tactics, knight tactics, opening introductions. Actually, I guess I could show some of these studies, and then also the basic rules. So, oh yeah, these are some really common patterns you'll see where, oh, let me see. Here we go. So another common pattern you'll see, I'll probably go over a bunch of these in future videos, is bringing the queen out early on. You'll see is often very strong. This is a little example where here this is already a fork, and this will lead to checkmate. These two attacks. So okay, yeah, I'll go over this in the next video, as well as the knight study, and I have some games to go over too that are a little more advanced. So I'll probably be trying to step up the difficulty every video, but yeah, this is the level 1 first video. So thanks for watching. I'll be signing off. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and you can message me on Lichess. I'm LucasJF on Lichess. So thanks for watching. Bye.